On today's episode, we're going to talk about real estate because one way or another, we're all involved in real estate. And sometimes we have to go through the rough times. And our guest, Travis Cross here, attorney in real estate, is going to help you through that situation. Welcome to the show, guys. Thank you so much for showing up, lending me your ears, eyes. Wherever you're watching this show, I appreciate it. I will introduce this sexy man here in just a second. But what we're going to do for all you newcomers, people that have never heard the show, we're going to get this out of the way. What is this podcast? It is the JAMODI PodCast. It stands for Just a Matter of Doing It. It's something I've lived my life by. I have it tattooed on my arm. I had it cut out of steel and hanging on the wall. It's just something that's passed down in my family over generations. No, it's not the Nike emblem. It's just something that I have lived my life by, and it's definitely have progressed me in my life. And what is it for? It's to help get information out there in this world and help another person take a positive step forward in life. And that's what this podcast today. It is with our guest, Travis Cross here. And he is man, I just went brain fart. Okay, he's an attorney and he's also a real estate agent. That's how we met. That's how we have common grounds here. But it's about how receivership is. And a lot of people didn't know what that was. I didn't know what it was until I met you. So first off, I'm going to let you introduce you are. Now, who the hell are you, bro? Travis Cross, everybody.
Travis Cross. Imagine me like rock the Dwayne Johnson, just without the tan. And instead of holding up Terramana, I'm holding up real estate receivership and knowledge, really. Okay.
What is receivership?
So receivership is regarding a property that the court has basically put into their possession, and they appoint a receiver to manage the property. It's to keep it from foreclosing. It's to sell it. It's to.
And this is usually brought up when?
Anytime property is held in litigation, meaning there's an active case around the property. And it's not just property. It's also businesses. It's also accounts. Like if someone's not paying their bill. I had someone call me last week. They're like, my daughter just got a notice that a receiver was pointing over a case. And I was like, what case? Well, she didn't pay her Cabela's card. And they owe about $2,000.
Okay.
They seized her checking account and took the money from the checking account to pay off that bill. Okay. So receivership can apply to multiple things. In this specific case, we're talking about real estate and sometimes business.
Okay, so how this relates to the genre of this podcast is that sometimes there are situations in life that are negative, and what we have this gentleman here for is to help you get through that hard time and make that positive step forward in whether it's business, family, or just your life or lifestyle. And so that's what JAMODI Podcast is about, is to help you take that positive step forward and move forward with that. So he's going to be an aid in that, and I have been aid in other things, and I'm completely ignorant when it comes to this stuff. He's a smart man. We met mutually at another brokerage, a real estate brokerage, and we just clicked. I think we met at a happy hour or something, right?
Yeah.
For the brokerage, which was a lot of fun, and we just clicked because we both can BS really quickly, and we're not really shy. So that worked out pretty well. So, so let's go ahead and educate people on this. Now, like I said, if you're watching this, guys, live on our platforms, social media platforms, I want you to please comment, ask some questions so we can either answer those during or after the show. But let's go ahead and educate people. What I like to give people on these listeners is give a scenario. So how can these viewers relate to a situation, right? How could they put their feet in the shoes? Okay, well, now I understand, right? So let's just, I know you don't want to do this, but let's just start with divorces, right? Okay. A house and a divorce. So let's start with what that is. How did you get started into this, right? But before I jump the bones here, we want to go ahead and explain your credentials, okay?
Okay.
Where'd you get your education? How long you been, real estate? How long you been an attorney? How long you been beautiful and smart? So those things. Tell us.
Well, ever since I started shaving my head, then.
Okay.
Right. Because before I just had this widow's peak that was, trust me, I look way better.
Widow's peak. I've never heard that one. I always call it the cul-de-sac.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never heard it called that.
The cul-de-sac?
No, man. Like if you ever watch Dragon Ball Z, like the Vegeta when he had the M on his head, imagine that, but just like huge. and it was right here all the way to the back of my head.
Oh, dude.
I know.
You're like, that's got to go.
So I was born almost bald.
Okay.
In Texas. And then I went to Plano West and graduated early.
Right.
I played football, so I got a scholarship to Oklahoma State. Go Pokes.
Yeah, how tall are you? Because you almost hit your head on all my doorways.
According to my high school report, I was 6'6" and 280. But according to college, I was 6'3" and 3/4. Okay. And then...
Jesus.
Yeah. Big difference because they try to boost... getting recruited and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so I left Plano West, went to Oklahoma State early, was, doing the winter workout program at Oklahoma State at the age of 17. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life, still to this day.
Yeah.
And then I graduated early from Oklahoma State with my bachelor's in English, creative writing. And I went to law school at the age of 20 at the University of Houston, go Cougars. And I went to law school at UHLC. Graduated 2017, moved back up here to Plano, and I started working for a couple of different law firms until 2019, whenever I went out and did my own thing, started my own law firm in 2019.
2019 is when you did that.
Yes.
Nice.
And my law firm it's still active, and it's based around family law practice, but one thing I actually started doing was I started representing receivers and realtors. Now, I was in your same position before. I'm like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And then I probably represented 5 or 6 of them before I got to the point where I was like, I really think I could do this.
Okay.
I have the knowledge, like as the attorney, I know it's a file. I know how to have a contested hearing, which means going before a court, explaining why your argument should be, or why your requested relief should be
Thanks
granted.
for explaining that, because I was about to say, what does that mean?
Yeah. And so last year I got my real estate license in February. It's been about a year exactly.
Yeah.
And I just started, letting all the attorneys that I've worked with as opposing counsel that, I got my real estate license. I'm starting to do receivership.
Okay.
And last year it just was incredible. The knowledge I gained while practicing family law, and I'm still practicing it for the record, but representing these receivers just streamlined the process for anybody going through a receivership and just made it easy to the point where I have had attorneys fill out testimonials about how happy they were and how quick it was done.
Okay.
To the point where attorneys will designate me as an expert witness in their trial so I can show up and testify regarding the value of the property, because in a trial it's your final hearing, which is 2 sides before a judge, and the judge will grant relief. Okay. Right? And it's your final chance to do that. And you can show up, and one side values the property, let's say $800,000, while the other side says $500,000. One of the sides will have me come with them and show the research I've done, why I believe the fair market value is this value, and then also just give real estate knowledge and like appraisal district knowledge.
So when you going through this, are you finding when you find these clients, they're like, what is happening? They're confused, right? Do you find yourself like with clients, they're always just like, what the hell is this?
Yes.
What's the next step? So you're purely educating these people as you start and throughout the whole process.
100%. Yeah. And it's the parties involved. It's sometimes the attorneys, because this is an area that not a lot of people know about. And I've had one case where a judge was like, why are you filing this stuff?
This is what we were talking about before the show started, guys. I had to actually tell him to shut up because I wanted him to say it on the show and not repeat it. I want it to be organic and raw about the conversations we had. Nothing here is scripted here. So sometimes attorneys and judges don't even know what receivership is or what's going through. Like, explain that. Like, because I what was it, like a month ago you came over to my house? I know you were telling me about the receivership, and it was just like over my head. I didn't know what the hell you were talking about. It was like law stuff, whatever.
So your question is, why don't attorneys or some judges know about?
Correct. That's my question.
Okay. So for attorneys, imagine being like a real estate agent, you know, and you pass your test, you become a real estate agent. Now what? In law school, they don't have a class about receivership that teaches you about it. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most there's like, we have codes that determine how we can qualify as a receiver and when a receiver can be appointed. But besides that, there's not much to go on it. So you couldn't even teach a class about it. like arguably you couldn't teach a class about what is receivership unless you had the practical knowledge that I'm here to explain to people. So attorneys.
Did you learn it in the field, basically?
I learned it while representing receivers and other realtors, and it just makes. I realize it makes. The goal of this podcast is to make your life easier, right? Or give you a solution.
Yep.
In this case, imagine whether it be a divorce, which you asked about, whether it be a probate without a will, and there's a bunch of heirs, or even civil litigation where a property is held up in this lawsuit. Imagine someone being able to come on board and say, all right, we do not need the signatures of the parties. We don't need the signatures of the parties getting divorced. We don't need the signatures of the heirs or the deceased. We don't need the signatures of the multiple businesses or people that own the property. I sign off on behalf of the listing agreement. I sign off on behalf of sometimes the seller's disclosure. Really? I will hire someone to go out there, do like a little inspection and give me the seller's disclosure, and I'll sign off on the contract and I'll sign off on the closing paperwork. I've had title companies come to my house, notaries come to my house, and I'll sit there and sign off on everything. As I'm signing, on below, I have to write on behalf of whatever the party's name. Yeah. You know,
it's like the power of attorney for basically.
That's a good comparison. Okay. Yeah, that's a good comparison. There's probably some ins and outs that are different because power of attorney is so common that if it applied here, I feel like we wouldn't be called receivers. We'd just be called power of attorneys over properties. But for all intents and purposes, a good explanation is I decide what happens to the property, but I don't collect the proceeds, right? I decide the listing, I decide what contract we go under, and by deciding that, as a quick caveat, when we get a contract, we have to file something with the court that says motion to report pending sale and get that signed by the judge. Now, we can be under contract.
And there's been times where a judge is like, what am I signing this, right? It's happened before, right?
It's happened before on the next thing. So one example I had was there's two motions you file. Motion to report pending sale, saying, Judge, I found this contract and it's the highest and best. Can we accept it? And judge signs off on it most likely. And then after it gets sold, after the closing occurs, then we do a motion to report sale. Okay. And I've had a judge say, I've already signed off on that first one. Why am I signing the second one? Well, Judge, you signed off on the contract to sell. And the second is confirming that it's sold because actually the land recording office will use that document and include it in the file. And I've had a judge ask me, why am I signing this again? And I had to put together a letter and file a letter with the court explaining the difference.
So you had to educate the judge. Yeah. So that sounds like something, obviously there's a lot of scenarios where this happens, but unfortunately all of us have to go through some situation like this, and it's a death. You know, somebody that doesn't have a will set up. And have you had an experience where that happened? Because guys, we all might have to go through this sometimes, and it's just part of life, and that's what this is, a solution, and educate you on situations like that, or someone like this man here could help you through this situation. So does that happen? Have you experienced?
Yes, I have one. Okay. I've done them in the past, and I have one pending.
Could you explain what it's like to go through or educate these people on the process you have to go through when there's not a will set in place?
Well, first off, always get a will. Like I understand that we're talking about what happens if you don't, but wills make your life way easier.
Yeah, obviously, but we're talking about when
worst case scenario, right?
We're solution, right? So these people didn't have that set up. So what's the next step when it happens?
So if there's not an agreement between the heirs on what the value of the property is, or even being able to list the property, sometimes they want it. Other times they want to sell it if there's multiple heirs. The court will basically just say, okay, well, we're going to sell it, because anytime the court has to make a decision whether to partition something, which means to sell it, or to give it to a person, most likely the court would choose the partition side. Now, if judges are watching this, they may disagree, but that's my understanding and my practice.
Okay. Is it an experience that you've been through so far?
Yes. Okay. And so in that situation, when you partition it, you're not, like, if you have 8 heirs, you're not going to obtain the signature of all the heirs, and some of them are deceased. I have one right now that has 12 heirs. 6 of them are deceased. but their heirs get whatever is awarded to them.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And so in that situation, receivership is so simple. Like once you get the order based upon its specific language, the order determines what a receiver can and can't do. And based upon its specific language within the four corners of the document, which is in the page, that's just a legalese, you can do whatever it tells you. And if it has what language it needs, which is like the standard form, from the time of appointment, I can go out there, evaluate the property, and then list it and get it under contract, especially in this market, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So the one case I have right now is we all hate Zillow, right?
Yeah.
But Zillow estimated the value of this property to be like $160,000, and I was like, okay.
Let's do this. Okay, since everybody can relate to this. Why do we hate Zillow?
We hate Zillow because it's not actually based upon the fair market analysis. It's based upon what's been sold that may not even apply to the property. It's a bird's eye view on the market in the area and not the specifics. Like looking at the inside, updates, looking at the land.
The comparables.
Exactly.
The real comparables.
Exactly.
Yes. Hey, you heard it from an attorney, okay? Yeah, you got it. He doesn't know everything. I don't know everything, but we have a good idea about it.
But and in this situation, it really applied.
Yeah.
Because it said like 160, whatever it was. I go out there, and it's this corner lot right next to this downtown area. I'm not going to disclose where it's at, just for privilege purposes.
Yeah.
But the house is completely caving in on itself.
Yeah.
It was in such a condition where my assistant and I did not want to go in it. It was. You
felt like it was going to fall on top of you?
Yes. And so I hired an engineer to get out there to go evaluate the property, and the report from the engineer was, this is not salvageable. It needs to be torn down. And because it's not salvageable, the value's in the land, and that Zillow estimate that was 160, when really houses are selling in that area for like 300, 400, you know?
Yeah.
But land is selling, last I checked, for, I think it was like, it came out to the number for the property would be about 28,000. So the value of the land in the area was selling for about $100K per acre, $120K per acre.
Okay.
And I try to communicate with the clients the entire process, just because, as you said, like often they're like, what's going on?
Yeah. Education part.
Yeah. And I told them that. They're like, you're wrong. I was like, I'm not, but, and I explained
the cost for the engineer to go out there was probably more than the house was worth.
Yeah. And the good thing about being a receiver is when we go on board on these cases like this, we actually, if we incur fees, we get paid from the sale of the property.
Okay.
So I had no problem getting an engineer out there, no problem listing it, no problem talking to, oh my God, I probably talked to 300 agents about this property, to the point where I updated the MLS listing and I was like, all inquiries, please send me an email. I said that, and still people would call me.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But so we actually, that case is actually super interesting as well.
Yeah,
because
I think you shared the, obviously without the client privilege, you didn't tell me details, but I think you shared me the situation because it wasn't as fun for you. I remember you talking to me.
I'm happy to do it because like a judge literally called me on the bench and was like, "I'm giving this to you." I was like, "You got it, judge."
Hey, an opportunity.
And not only was it the fact it was falling down, but the city was actually expanding the road, and so they were taking by easement property.
Yeah.
And then there was a road on the east side of the property. That
so if you guys
access.
don't know what easement is, it's basically a part of the land that the city can take. You would explain it better, but we're both realtors.
You're doing a great job.
We're both realtors, but it's basically like, say, if they want to widen the road and your property, the front of your property is in that, they can take by easement and put a road over the front of your property by easement. That's what that is.
Right. And then but as an additional caveat is they'll send you an offer. If you decline, they'll do 3 appraisals to determine what the fair market value is for the property. And then if you decline that,
eminent domain, right?
It becomes eminent domain.
Yeah.
And a city rep could talk more about whether or not they go straight into eminent domain from that, but that's my understanding. And it ended up being where we're getting it sold for definitely under 160.
Yeah.
But that's one situation where probate applies, and truly where it's receivership helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people that watch this podcast that are business owners. Okay, so let's shift gears into what you do.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this one.
Yeah, right. It's we all have interest in this, and there's a lot of viewers and listeners that like this part because we're business people. We're trying to make a positive impact on our life and business. So receivership can happen in business. So business owners. I'm going to shut up. You explain it. So. How have you experienced this receivership when it comes to businesses?
Okay.
Multiple business owners because of that, right?
So let's bring it down a notch just from businesses, but let's just say people, because let's say there's two people that own a piece of property. Yeah. Right. And when they own that, whether it's self-employed and they have their own business or whatever, or they're a single person, you're something called a tenant in common with that, which means you have 50% ownership. Both sides have 50% ownership. And it comes down to, you should be making joint decisions with your business partner of this property. But if you can't, then let's say you want to sell and the other one wants to keep on renting, same situation, the court will most likely get the property sold just to make everyone happy. And in that situation, I'll give you an example. There was a property in Dallas where I went and toured it with one of my clients who was a flipper, and it was listed for $5 million.
Flipping houses or land, or
flipping houses. Okay, yeah. And he owns a construction company, and he would go in there. He was like, "This isn't worth $5 million. It's probably worth $2 million." And I called the agent and I said, "What's the deal?" "Well, it's owned by 3 different businesses and they want to get it sold for $5 million." And I was like, have you ever heard of something called receivership? No, what's that? Well, receivership is where I could come on board and get this property sold and keep you as the realtor, because as a receiver, we have the authority to terminate listing agreements and then list as a realtor. But where we help out other realtors is we come on board and help them if they're in situations and keep them as the realtor while we're the receiver. Does that make sense?
Explain it a little bit deeper.
Okay, so I am an attorney, I am a real estate agent, I am a receiver. Okay? Whenever I get appointed as a receiver, I have the authority to sign off on listing agreements.
Got it.
And everything I explained. Now, because I have my real estate license, I act as the receiver and the realtor. Okay? In situations where, let's say you had a beautiful property, but it's people are getting divorced. How can I help you? The answer to that is I get appointed as a receiver on the case itself. I say, Turner, send me the listing agreement. Send me what you think the fair market value is. Send me the contract when we get it. I will handle the filings with the court and set me up for closings for the property. So instead of you working with that client, you start working with me. You act as the realtor. I act as the receiver. Okay? I
got it.
Okay? So in this business, the solution, unless they just agree to reduce the price, which would save them time and money, but sometimes
because they could have a buyer that would want to buy it.
They've had multiple buyers. And multiple offers. And in that situation, I can come on board. Once the receivership order is signed, based upon what it says, I can sign off on the listing, closing, etc.
At a lower price than they agreed, or what?
At a fair market price.
Fair market price.
Fair market price. So
because the judge is going to approve of that, correct?
So not every situation will they approve of it, because under the code you have to prove certain things. Like under the family code, you have to prove that the property basically will be wasted or damaged or something like that. There's specific terminology. Under a civil case, it's less restrictive. But once a judge signs off on the order appointing receiver, I can come on board. And just in that situation, let's say you had that $5 million property, I would say, Turner, send me the listing agreement. I'll sign off on it. You're good. If there's any issues from the sellers, send them to me directly and I'll explain everything to them. Because that's a big part of it, is once I'm appointed and I show up and I'm saying, your property's getting sold, well, over my dead body. I I understand your frustration, but if you have frustration, please take it up with the court. I'm just simply here to do my job and ultimately help you and I'm helping everybody.
Yeah, really.
Because whenever it comes to being a receiver, the number one thing is to be unbiased. You have to be unbiased, right? If multiple situations, you share out the contract, you share out what you're going to accept to everybody. You disseminate that information equally. But that's in like a civil case, which would be business owners.
What would it be like? Not real estate, not actual physical. What about a business?
A business.
Business.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Can you do that? You handle those.
Yes.
Right. So explain. I mean, it's kind of the same situation, right?
Kind of, but imagine you're not. Sometimes you get appointed to sell the business. Sometimes you get appointed just to manage it, so the other side doesn't run into the ground.
Okay.
Like in a divorce, let's say the husband or wife is the breadwinner, and they have this business that makes a lot of money, and they get divorced, and they're completely pissed off, and I can't work. I'm not doing this.
Or they're trying to get back at the other one by just ruining it.
Yep, it's completely situational, and the court, if they are decreasing the value of the business, the court can appoint a receiver to come on board and manage the business. Because when you're getting divorced, one of the things, if the business is worth something, if a CPA says it's worth something, then it's included in the division of the estate. And by the division of the estate, that means like the community property you've acquired since the date of marriage. Imagine like a big pie. Everything you've acquired is in that pie. And if a business...
Shut that window so that damn dog will shut up.
You got it.
We got this window up here in the studio, and we got this freaking dog next door. Sorry.
I was loving that breeze. We're having beautiful weather now after last week.
I know. Yeah, sorry. The little dog got it.
But so a part of that pie, and let's say a section is that pie, and if you are decreasing the section, the business you own, it's overall like decreasing the value of the community estate.
Okay.
And that's whenever a receiver can step in, and it is a big task. It is where you come on board, you review every email, every transaction, you hire a team around you. So you can hire an accountant to determine the books. You can see the status of whatever deals are going on. There was one case where it was like a shipping company. Like it wasn't Amazon, but it was a third party that ships to Amazon, like whatever they're called. And I got asked to come on board and manage it. And in that case, I was fully transparent. I was like, I do not have a business degree. I would need to hire a team around me that could handle this. And yes, I could come on board and manage everything. But I think, like, I will recommend other people that I know that do this work for businesses if I'm not qualified to do it. And in that situation, I referred it out.
Okay. Man, this is... do you feel like you, being on the show today, explained what receivership is? Do you feel like you did a good job of explaining? Because let's go ahead and... I remember I told you to shut up earlier. What was your goal of coming on this show today? What was your goal? You said it earlier.
So my goal in coming on this show is to simplify and make receivership easy for everybody, because courts have literally ruled that receivership should be the last resort. Well, the truth, after doing it for a year and representing people for multiple years before that, is that it streamlines the process and makes it pain-free for everybody. It just pulls the decision-making power from them. Yeah. And the practicality standpoint, if someone's getting divorced and they say property needs to be listed and sold, okay, great, and that's all it says, right? Let's say the property doesn't get listed and sold, and you have to file a motion to enforce that it needs to be listed and sold because, let's say, a disgruntled spouse didn't sign off on it. Not only do you have to enforce that, and the only thing you're enforcing is the listing agreement, but every time they don't sign something along the transaction process, you have to file another motion for enforcement.
It takes more.
Incur more fees, attorney's fees, waste more time. Yeah. Now, in that situation, if the case is open, you can ask for additional temporary orders to appoint a receiver, or if the case is closed, you can do something called a motion for clarification to appoint a receiver. Okay. And then we step in and, the realtor had their opportunity. We step in, we get it done. Now, in situations where it says to be listed and sold, And then if it's not, a receiver gets appointed. That's already in the decree or the final order for the case, and we can step in and make it easy. And in my practice, in my family law practice before, I wish I knew the practicality of using a receiver.
Yeah.
Now doing it, I'm trying to educate as many attorneys, judges, mediators, and even realtors on how I can help them. Because I would say that I've done a really good job in the past year of being in this business of helping out all those people. Realtors, helping out that guy in Dallas. Attorneys, being designated as an expert witness for final trial.
Yeah.
Because there's times when they get rid of the property and they undervalue it, and I'll turn around and say, no, like all these properties together are worth $500,000 together, and that adds $500,000 to the community estate or whatever is being negotiated.
Yeah.
And then there was one other point.
Your point, it says that you wanted to destroy the stigma, the negative stigma.
100%. Yeah, because it is such an area where it's been determined a last resort, but in my practice, I think it should be the first resort, the first choice.
Okay.
And receiver, as a realtor receiver, great. But also what we do is receivers can charge their fees, just as an attorney does, right? They have attorney's fees, we have receivers fees. We offer to include our receiver fees in some cases. If we get appointed and everyone starts shaping up and everything's agreed to, it's our policy, you're not going to incur fees.
Okay.
But if for whatever reason we have to have hearings, if for whatever reason people are being difficult getting out of the house, those are situations where you will have to incur the fees, but these are fees that you would have to incur anyways if you ever want to get this property sold, whether it be through an attorney and motions for enforcement, which would be way more expensive.
Yeah. Unless
you have an attorney doing it pro bono, right?
Yeah.
Or just making it, if they're not signing off on orders, if we have to have multiple hearings. I've been in situations where I had to serve someone 3 times with a motion for enforcement, and I was before a court asking to hold her in contempt so I could access the property, change the locks, and then put together her stuff so she can find a new place to live.
Jesus.
And it almost got to that point. And finally, it was a jurisdictional, it was a statutory thing where a motion for new trial was finally granted or filed and granted based upon how you can. And so ultimately it got removed from the case, but not for pushing it in the direction of getting the property sold, because I got removed from the case because the case restarted.
Oh my God.
Imagine going through that situation.
And then just start all over.
Start all over.
Jesus. Well, I mean, we got to wrap this show up for all these people that have attention span problems. So, you did an amazing job in explaining everything. What I want to do is for people that are maybe or in the future or know someone that would go through a situation like that, how would they get a hold of you?
So we have our website. It's lrecg.com, just Lawyers Receivership Group. Okay. I also have my email, travis@lrecg.com. And you can Google Travis Cross Receiver and you should be able to find me. But if you have any questions or you need help in determining how we can help you, just shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and let's have a conversation. I mean,
for sure.
Did I or did I not? Whenever I was walking in, I was on the phone with an attorney.
Yeah, you were
telling them what they need to do for their case.
You're always on the damn phone though, so.
Yeah, well, my assistant and my fiance hate me for that.
Well, guys, I appreciate you showing up. If, like I said before, if you could give us some feedback on this show, thank you so much, Travis, for hopping on here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and remember, as I always say, guys, JAMODI, it's just a matter of doing it. Take care.